So hello and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Ammel Sharon. I teach in the Social Sciences cluster, and with me is Dr. Anviksha Drall, who is an economist who also teaches in the Social Sciences cluster. So you may have had the opportunity to participate and listen in and maybe interact with some of our faculty members in the BA course. We had some master classes recently. These have been uploaded and are available to view. Today, we'll be focusing on the NLSAT-BA exam and how do you approach this. Many of you may be in the middle of board exams, and so I'm going to take a little bit of time to go over the instructions in the question paper and then how to approach it, if you haven't had the time to do so. So the NLSAT BA question paper is a single paper with two parts. If you have any questions regarding what we are going to discuss, put it in the Q&A box and we will discuss it at the end of our brief presentation. So the NLSAT BA question paper is a single paper. It has two parts, part A and part B. The duration of the exam is 150 minutes. And to qualify for consideration of your paper, you have to answer both Part A and Part B. Part A will consist of 75 multiple choice questions and will be for a maximum of 75 marks, so 1 mark per question. And there is negative marking, so 0.25 marks will be deducted for each wrong answer and for each unanswered question. Now, you have access to two sample question papers. One is available to everybody. The second one, I think, is available to those who have paid for your application. We'll be discussing the second sample that is available to paid applicants, and that may be of interest if you want to read the rest of the questions. So the sample questions are indicative; they are not exhaustive. They give you a sense for what you will be tested for. We do not prescribe any set syllabus. So part A of the NLSAT-BA, let me share my screen so that we can go over the questions together and we can also solve them together. Now, part A of the NLSAT-BA paper will test reading and comprehension, general awareness, critical reasoning, and quantitative reasoning, right? And my colleague Anviksha will discuss how to tackle the quantitative reasoning. Let's go to sample passage 1. These sample passages are about 500 words. And then there are a number of questions based on these sample passages. I'm going to read out one and then we'll solve the questions based on this passage. A cold February morning, an overcast sky with patches of sunlight hangs over the green Patkai hills in the remote village of Gandhigram in Arunachal Pradesh's eastern district of Changlang, bordering Myanmar. On a wide sprawling field, a stage made of wild bamboo, cane, and local leaves was all set for the second Koshi Pai festival of the Lisu tribe. Ko means year, Shi translates to new, and Pai means festival. As flowers start to bloom in February, Koshi Pai marks the beginning of the new year for the Lisu community, also known as Yobins in India. The words Lisu and Yobin are often used interchangeably to refer to this minority tribe comprising just about 5,000 people in India. For this community, the festival is also a way to unite, come together, and celebrate, besides solving any problems that arise among its people. However, due to a lack of substantial research and written material on the Lisus in India, their existence has remained shrouded in mystery. People from the community believe they have been inhabiting the hamlets of Vijayanagar and Gandhigram, situated deep inside the Namdapha National Park for decades. They also reside in Changlang's Mio town, an Indian village. Belonging to the Tibeto-Burman family, they are primarily from the Yunnan province of southwestern China, Kachin state of northeastern Myanmar, and the hills of Thailand. Foot-tapping music of the Lisus reverberated throughout the entire field as people gathered in large numbers. Aduti Asa Yobin, a 35-year-old woman from the Lisu tribe, swiftly arranged vegetables, fruits, snacks, and other local items for display at one of the many stalls in the festival. We want to showcase our culture and tradition to the rest of the world, she said. Gwasibo Yobin, a 31-year-old member of the Koshi Pai Festival's organizing committee, said, "We made a committee and organized this festival for the first time in 2024. Our culture has been hidden for so long. We want to invite people from the rest of the country. Funding usually comes from the Lisu families. For years, the Lisus have lived a life of obscurity because they are completely cut off from Arunachal Pradesh's major towns and cities. There is one road through the Namdapha National Park that goes to Gandhigram, and then 20 kilometers further to Vijayanagar, the last Indian village bordering Myanmar. But this bumpy and rough stretch takes about 8 hours to Gandhigram from Miao, a sleepy, picturesque town and a subdivision of the Changlang district. The only cars that can maneuver their way through the terrain are 4x4 pickup trucks. It is believed that the Assam Rifles, one of India's oldest paramilitary forces, found the Lisus in 1961. Yomanu Yobin, president of the women's wing of the tribal uplift group Yobin Welfare Society, said, "The land we live in fell in an undefined land during British India. This part of the land was known as NIFA, Northeast Frontier Agency, a political division in British India that is now present-day Arunachal Pradesh." You can see that this passage has been extracted with some editing from the Frontline magazine, the issue published last year in March in 2025. So you can expect that the passages you will get will be from some public concern. This may be unfamiliar to you, but all the information you need is based on the passage, right? So let's look at the first question. According to the passage, what is the primary reason why the Lisu tribe's existence in India has remained largely unknown? There are 4 options that may or may not be viable. They have only recently migrated to Arunachal Pradesh. Probably not true. Their population is too small to be considered significant. That's not why they are largely unknown according to the passage, not according to our opinion, according to the passage. There has been a lack of substantial research and documentation on them. We know that this line occurs in the passage and is related to their obscurity. The Indian government does not officially recognize them as a tribe. That's not true. So C is the answer, right? What does the passage imply about the accessibility of the Lisu settlements in Arunachal Pradesh? They are well connected by modern roads, but few people travel there. Not true. The only access route is a difficult and time-consuming road through Namdapha National Park. That's something that we find in the passage, right? Their villages can only be reached by foot due to strict environmental regulations. That may or may not be true. It's outside the scope of the passage, so we can't consider it. The Indian government has restricted entry to their region due to security concerns. Doesn't occur in the passage. So if we stick with the passage, B will be true. You know that there's an answer key at the end of the sample question paper. Do take a look at that. Which of the following statements would weaken the argument that the Lisu tribe has been isolated from the rest of Arunachal Pradesh? Now, this is where your critical reasoning comes in. The argument in the question is the Lisu tribe has been isolated from the rest of Arunachal Pradesh. But which of these 4 would weaken that argument? The Lisu community has long maintained economic and cultural ties with nearby tribes. If that were true, would they remain isolated? That would weaken the argument. Let's consider the next. There are no modern roads leading to Lisu settlements, making travel difficult. If that were true, that cannot be true in this case. Most Lisu people rely on traditional methods of subsistence farming and hunting. That also would not weaken the argument. The Ko Shi Pai festival was organized to bring awareness about the Lisu culture. That's also untenable. So the first um, uh, answer would be A. That would be the right answer. Which of the following best explains the irony in the Lisu tribe's efforts to gain recognition? So here too, you are thinking about critical reasoning and inferring, right? What is irony but contradiction? What explains the irony or the contradiction in the Lisu tribe's efforts to gain recognition? Or it's a sort of sad contradiction here. Through the Koshi Pai festival. The government funds the festival but does not officially recognize the Lisu tribe. That's not true from the passage. The Lisu tribe celebrates their unity, but internal conflicts continue to divide them. That's also not something we can infer from the passage. The festival attracts national attention, but the Lisu tribe are resistant to modernization. We don't get that sense from the passage either. The festival is meant to showcase their culture, but they remain geographically isolated. That's probably the irony, right? They've been doing this for 2 years, but still they remain isolated in 2025. So D would be the answer. Mm. The next one, the passage states that the Lisu tribe was discovered by the Assam Rifles in 1961. What assumption is implicit in this claim? So you might find that there are several options that come close to the right answer, but remember here there is one right answer, so you need to be able to think about this carefully. The Lisu tribe was unknown to the Indian government at the time. Um, that may be one of the possibilities. The Assam Rifles were the first to interact with the Lisu tribe. We don't know about that. The Lisu people had previously interacted with other local communities, again outside the scope of the passage. The Assam Rifles actively sought to document all isolated tribes in India. That is simply not true. That doesn't come from the passage at all. So the assumption probably is A, that the Lisu tribe were unknown to the Indian government before this time, which is why one arm of the government, which is the paramilitary forces, comes to discover the tribe, right? Let's go to 6, and this is the last one I will do based on this passage, and we can discuss things further in the question and answer round. Foot tapping music of the Lisus reverberated throughout the entire field as people gathered in large numbers. What does the word reverberated suggest in this context? A, music was played at an unusually high volume. Does reverberation give us a sense of high volume? Not really. The music caused physical vibrations in the ground. Does reverberated necessarily mean physical vibrations? Not really. It comes close, but that's not quite accurate. The music created a powerful echoing effect. Reverberation refers to echoing, right? So C might be the probable answer here. Music was played repeatedly in a loop. That's not what reverberated means. So your answer here would be C. It created a powerful and echoing effect. So in this case, when we look at just these 6 questions, you get a sense that you have to read closely and be able to comprehend what's happening. So take your time and read carefully. We also look for critical reasoning because sometimes you have to look for what is an implicit assumption or what might the question be asking us to do. It may not be a direct question. For example, the 4th question on what explains the irony, or the 3rd question, what might weaken the argument. So you want to read the questions carefully, right? We can discuss this further, but I'm going to ask my colleague Anviksha to take us through the quantitative bit in part A.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So as Ammel mentioned, I'll be taking you all through the quantitative reasoning part. And again, in the paper, the questions related to quantitative reasoning will be there in the section A. And again, it will be in the form of a passage. So I'll be sharing my screen here, and we'll again have another passage from the sample paper 2. So, yeah, uh, can somebody confirm if the screen is visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, sure. So, so I'll be taking sample passage 4. So this is part of, again, the same sample paper, which is the sample paper 2. So I'll read it out, and please be there with me and read all the numbers which are given in the paragraph, all the information that is given very slowly with me, and then we'll try to solve a couple of questions which will be able to give you a flavor of the questions related to quantitative reasoning. So, before starting, would like to just mention that this is a passage from Mint, Live Mint newspaper from year 2025. And these are some edited portions of the article from the newspaper. So I'll start reading, and in case some number is not visible or there is any other issue, you can zoom in on your screen to have a better clarity and to avoid any confusion or misinformation about the figures that are given. So India GDP growth estimate. India is likely to gain a share in global output in the coming decades, driven by strong foundational factors, including robust population growth, according to Morgan Stanley. India is projected to become the world's third largest economy by 2028, with its economic growth set to hit $5.7 trillion in the next 3 years. According to Morgan Stanley, by 2028, India will become the world's most sought after consumer market with a higher share in global output, driven by macro stability influenced policy and better infrastructure. From a $3.5 trillion economy in 2023, the Indian economy is projected to expand to $4.7 trillion in 2026, making it the fourth largest in the world behind US, China, and Germany. In 2028, India will overtake Germany as its economy expands to $5.7 trillion. According to Morgan Stanley, India was the 12th largest economy in the world in 1990, but it slipped to the 13th position in 2000 before rising to the ninth rank in 2020 and fifth in 2023. India's share of the world's GDP is projected to rise from 3.5% to 4.5% in 2029. The report projects three scenarios for India's growth. Beer, where the economy expands to $6.6 trillion by 2035 from $3.65 trillion in 2025. Second one is the base, where it grows to $8.8 trillion, and bull, where the size balloons to $10.3 trillion. It saw GDP per capita rise from $2,514 in 2025 to 4,247 in the beer scenario in 2035, $5,683 under the base scenario, and 6,706 under the bull scenario. Regarding present times, Morgan Stanley said growth is likely recovering. India is likely gaining share in global output in the coming decades, driven by a strong foundational factors, including robust population growth, a functional democracy, macro stability influenced policy, better infrastructure, a rising entrepreneurial class, and improving social outcomes. The implication is that India will be the world's most sought after consumer market. It will undergo a major energy transition. Credit to GDP will rise, and manufacturing could gain share in GDP, said Morgan Stanley in its report. High frequency indicators were mixed in recent weeks but are distinctly better than a few months ago. We expect growth to recover after 2H24 second half of 2024 slowdown on fiscal and monetary policy support with recovery in service exports. The global brokerage expected India's GDP to be 6.3% in the fiscal year ending March 31 and 6.5% next. Macro stability should remain in the comfort range, providing flexibility to policymakers, said the report. Going forward, the country's consumption recovery is expected to be broad based as the income tax cuts propel urban demand, supporting the trend in rural consumption. Within investments, public and household capex drove growth, while private corporate capex recovered gradually. The strength in service exports bodes well for the labor market outlook, with moderating inflation likely to improve purchasing power. Domestic demand may emerge as the key driver of growth, bolstered by policy support on monetary and fiscal front. Headline consumer price index has cooled off from its near-term peak to track close to 4%, driven by moderating food prices, while core inflation continues to remain well-behaved. The outlook for headline inflation hinges on food prices, 46% of the CPI basket, which is expected to soften in the coming months. Morgan Stanley expected inflation to be 4.3% year on year in financial year 2026 to 27, lower than 4.9% in financial year 25. On the monetary policy front, the RBI is easing across all its levers, rates, liquidity, and regulations. It embarked on a rate easing cycle in February policy, and Morgan Stanley expected another 25 BPS rate cut. We'll come back to that. BPS rate cut in April. On the fiscal side, the budget aims to reinforce growth recovery by spurring consumption and spending mix in favor of capex while keeping macro stability in check by maintaining fiscal prudence. So I think we have around 9 or 10 questions. Given the time constraint, I'll try to solve a couple of them, maybe around 5 or 6. And in case you have any doubts, at the end, you can please write down your doubts in the QA box, and we'll be taking up your questions after the session is over. So the first question is, Morgan Stanley discusses projections under 3 scenarios, bull, base, and bear, in their reports. Which of the following options represent the 3 scenarios in ascending order of percentage change in GDP? So two things that you are expected to understand here if you read the question. First one is, what is ascending order, which is a concept from your high school basic mathematics, and second is the percentage change. Now, if I go back to the first paragraph, here, yeah, sorry, it's in the second paragraph. They've mentioned here where in the beer phase, I'll highlight it, in the beer where the economy expands to 6.6 trillion by 2035 from 3.65 in 2025. So for the base year or the initial point 2025, the value is already given as 3.65, and for 3 different phases of 2035, they have given 3 values. In the beer phase, the value can be 6.6 trillion. In the base, it can be 8.8, and in the bull phase, it will be 10.3. So for 3 phases for the same year in 2035, you have been provided with 3 values, and for 2025, you have been given 3.65 trillion as the value. So all the information is given in the paragraph. You don't have to assume anything. And given these values, now let's go back to the question. So they have asked which of the following options represent the 3 scenarios in ascending order of percentage change. So you have to calculate the percentage change for each phase. So you have to calculate 3 percentage changes here, which is one for bull, beer, and the third one for the base. So clearly you can find it out here that for the beer phase, your percentage change will be 6.6 minus 3.65 upon 3.65. For the base one, it will be 8.8 minus 3.65 upon 3.65. And for the bull, it will be 10.3 minus 3.65 by 3.65. So you can calculate the values here, and it's a bit intuitive also because the values are increasing, and you can see that in the phase where you are having the maximum increase in GDP, your percentage change is highest. So in this particular case, your answer will be beer, base, and bull. So you can calculate the values. It will come out to be more than 100% in the bull phase. And I think for the beer one, it's 80%. So you can match it with the answer key that is given to you. So the next question is, the report projects a rise in GDP per capita from 2514 to 4247 in 2035. Which of the following scenarios could best describe an increase in GDP per capita? So even though it might happen that somebody is not aware of the concept of GDP per capita, that is totally fine. But because in the brackets it's mentioned that the GDP per capita is calculated by GDP upon aggregate population. So the question is, which of the following scenarios could best describe an increase in GDP per capita? So you have two variables here. You have a ratio or a fraction wherein in the numerator you have the GDP and in the denominator you have the aggregate population. So what are you expected to understand here? What are the various possible changes that can happen in either GDP or population or both of them that can result in an increase in GDP per capita? So clearly, if there is only a rise in GDP, we cannot for sure say that your GDP per capita will go up because nothing is mentioned about your population here. Same way, only an increase in population. Definitely, if there is an increase in population, your GDP per capita will go down. Coming to the C part, a rise in GDP faster than the rise in population. So in this case, both your numerator and denominator are increasing, but the rate of increase in GDP is clearly faster than the rate of increase in population, which is your denominator. So in this case, your GDP per capita will increase. Third one is a fall in GDP faster than rise in population. So in this D part, your GDP is decreasing and your population is increasing. So clearly your GDP per capita will go down. So the correct answer in this case is C. So you can work around this question. The only four options are given to you, and then play around the fractions and see what is happening to the overall ratio if one variable or a combination or any dynamics in that particular ratio are changing. Next is question 24. Which of the following represents the correct percentage change in projected GDP values for the years 2026 and 2028 compared to year 2023? So, for all the questions, two things that you have to remember for quantitative reasoning. Either all the information is given in the passage. If it is not given, and if there is any assumption that you have to make, that will be mentioned to you in the question. So either it will be mentioned in the question, or all the information or the facts will be given to you in the paragraph. So only on the basis of that you have to answer. These are not any facts that you are expected to memorize and answer, that what is happening between 26 and 28, how much is the percentage change, and so on. So for this question, if we go back to the paragraph, you need to find out the values here for 2023 and 26. Sorry, let me go back. Projected GDP values for 2026 and 28. So in the question, I think in the first paragraph, they have mentioned that from 3.5 trillion economy in 2023, I'll highlight it so that there is no confusion. The economy is projected to expand to 4.7 in 2026. And for 2028, they have given the value as $5.7 trillion. So 2026 and 28 are the expected values, but for 2023, $3.5 trillion is the given value. Now the question here is that what is the correct percentage change? So clearly the expected values are increasing for 2026 and 28. So option B and C are in options B and D are ruled out because your GDP is increasing. So either it is A or B. Now you can easily pick any of the years and find out the percentage change. So for 2026, you can calculate the percentage change as 4.7 minus 3.5 by 3.5, and this should amount to 34%, I guess. So let me just check it. Yeah, so the correct answer for this is C. So for 2026, your percentage change should amount to 34%, and for 2028 it will be 2028. Sorry, for 2028 it will be 63%. So again, there is no key to whether you have to, calculate the percentage change for all the years. If you are able to match your option with 1 year, you can answer the question using that value itself. Maybe I can take one more question and then we can stop. Yeah, question 25. Morgan Stanley expects a 4.3% year-on-year inflation in financial year 2026 to 27, which is lower than 4.9% in financial year 2025. So this indicates you have to interpret and understand this information that is given to you in the question, that your inflation is increasing from the rate of 4.3% to 4.9% in financial year expects a 4.3% inflation in 26. Yeah, so for 25 it is 4.9 and it is going down to 4.3 in the financial year 2026. So how do you interpret it? Four options are given, whether and the all the options are related to the price changes. So one is whether your prices are increasing or decreasing, and second, whether the increase or decreasing in prices is happening at an increasing or decreasing rate. So since the inflation rate is positive, that clearly indicates that your prices are increasing. So anyhow, options B and D are ruled out. Now, second is whether your rate of inflation or the rate of change of prices is occurring at an increasing or decreasing rate. So the rate of the change of price itself is going down from 4.9 to 4.3. So even though prices are increasing, the increase in prices is happening at a decreasing rate. So in this case, your correct answer is again C. So this is how you have to go through the questions, try to interpret it, and you have to use the values that are given to you in the question or the paragraph. So I'll hand it over back to Ammel. She will take you to the section B of the question paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Anviksha. Can I share my screen, please, Anviksha? If you can stop sharing your screen. So as you can see from from the discussions, these two discussions of two questions or two passages from the paper, what you're being tested on is not something too complex, neither is it something that you need to have studied in depth before. It's asking you for some basic general awareness and also some basic calculation. I see that we are receiving a number of questions in the Q&A box. We will answer all of them at the after we discuss part B. So again, don't be too scared about the level of complexity. What we're asking you is to read carefully and apply your mind to these questions. Let me now share my screen and we can look at part B. Right. Now, part B is the subjective part of the paper, and we'll have it will have short questions, short answers, and an essay question, right, for a maximum of 75 marks. So each question in the short answers will be about 12.5 marks. And then the long essay, you have to write one long essay, will be 25 marks. Let me take you through part B. So in the short answers, you will be provided space to write your answer. So you see there's a short question, and then you have a little bit of space to write your answer. This means that you will not be given any extra pages to write your answer. All of your answer has to fit in within this space. So whether your handwriting is small or large, that does not matter so much as structuring your answer in a clear way, right? What is of value also is not how much you write, but whether you are able to put across your point of view in a compelling way. So we're going to sort of talk a little bit about how do you write a compelling answer. So remember, you will have no extra pages. It doesn't matter whether your handwriting is large or small. You want to be clear and you want to be compelling in your answer. Um, so all of the questions that we give will be testing not just general awareness, but also how you put across your point of view. So let's take a sample question. Number one, Munni used the word parivar, or family, to describe the relationship she shared with her cows and goats. Drawing from this quote, how do you understand the word family or parivar? Now, this is a question that demands a short answer as compared to the long essay. So you want to be able to provide maybe one or two clear points about how you understand the word family or parivar. How might you go about this? Um, we are asking you not just for your opinion, right? But really for a little bit of analysis. What's going to make your response stand out from amongst the many hundreds of other people who are going to give this exam? So maybe there is no one way of answering this. And unlike the part A, where there is one right answer, in part B, it is sort of subjective. But that does not mean that all answers are equally good, right? So let's think a little bit about what might make for a compelling answer. Now, when we look at this question, we understand that the subject of the question is family. But it's also about a slightly different notion of family. What's the commonsensical notion of family? That in our case, it has to do with humans and blood related or blood relations. That's usually the notion of family, right? Biological human related by blood kinship. But what we see Munni doing is that she shares a relationship with her cows and goats that for her is like family. Now, you want to then ask yourself and then tell the reader whether you agree that the relationship that one shares with cows and goats can come within the commonsensical notion of family, or whether we have to maybe broaden our notion of family. So, for instance, even in science, the idea of family is not just blood related, right? It's a little more loose. It's taxonomic. Within taxonomic classifications, it can relate to structure or function or genus. Or when we think about the word fraternity from the French Revolution in the 18th century, which you are all familiar with, we know that people united um, like brothers, for instance, against the monarchy. Or when we think about family, we know that some people are cast out of their families if they are, of a different sexual orientation, if they're lesbian or gay or transgender. And then the people who attend to them in their time of need become their chosen families, right? And their friendship becomes quite important. Friends replace the commonsensical notion of family. Or there are cultures which do not make a strict separation between animals and humans, like Amazonian peoples and so on. So already we find that the commonsensical notion of family doesn't always work, let's say. in many sort of instances. So you might want to consider this and tell your reader the commonsensical idea is, you know, something, and we already have different instances, and then provide maybe your own perspective on what you think about family today. And then maybe you want to make a second point about what you think the relationship between family, between humans and animals is in the context of this question, right? You might want to refer to a contemporary scenario, for instance, something that the Supreme Court said about removing stray dogs from highly populated areas. That's a general issue. You do not need any specific legal knowledge at all. You know that the Supreme Court said we must remove dogs, and then there was a lot of protest by other people who are very fond of dogs. So there again, you see that a contemporary issue is really sort of influenced by how people feel about animals, right? Many will describe dogs, let's say, as family. So there you have a way in which to think about a dilemma, a public dilemma, through the perspective of this question. So you can then make, you know, two clear points and answer a question like this. So that's a short answer. Um, you'll find um, uh, the sample paper, you know, giving you about four different questions like this. Let me quickly go to the long essay, which is a 25-mark essay. So it asks you to write an essay on any one of the following word prompts, and you'll be given a word prompt. That again is something that is not very obscure. It's something familiar to you. So what we are going to then assess you on, evaluate your answer, is how compelling you are. Let's break down what might be compelling. One of the things you want to keep in mind for a subjective answer is write clearly and precisely. Don't write sentences that are too long, because often you see you begin with something somewhere and in your hurry you've ended up somewhere else in terms of the subject of your sentence. So be clear, be precise. Second, think about analysis, argument, and evidence. So we've talked a little bit about how you analyze a problem. I'll speak a little more about this in terms of the long essay. How do you create an argument? An argument is not a negative thing. It is really being able to look at a problem, a subject, and a problem that you define within that subject, and be able to write something, take a position maybe, and give evidence, substantiate it. So it's very different from an opinion. Then you need to think about structure and flow. What must my introduction contain? What must my paragraphs, the body paragraphs, contain? What should my conclusion do? We'll talk a little bit about this as well. So there are, you know, three things that you want to keep in mind: write clearly and precisely, be able to show that you can analyze well by making an argument and substantiating it with evidence, and you want to think about your structure and that all of the paragraphs sort of flow well between each other, so you're not making disconnected points. So what does an introduction do? It introduces your reader to the topic or the subject you're going to write about, right? So if you have something on tariffs, you want to tell your reader, okay, this is how tariffs are understood today. And you know, tariffs can sort of mean different things, different can have a wide variety of meanings. You want to sort of lay the scope for what you are going to talk about. Then you might want to zoom in and you want to frame the problem of tariffs within the subject you wish to analyze. So when I say you want to frame a problem, it means that there are more than one way to think about this particular issue, right? So to make your argument, you want to articulate different ways to think about this issue, or maybe different perspectives, and then take a position. That will show your reader or evaluator that you are able to anticipate different perspectives before you take a position. That means that you're not making an opinion simply, or you're not just talking about your feelings. You are sort of informed. And again, don't be too worried about the specific nature of these topics. They are general topics. If you have been, let's say, reading editorials, opinion pieces, long form essays in good magazines, you should be able to answer all of these. Then you want, in your introduction, to tell your reader what is the argument that you wish to make after having laid out these different perspectives, right? Maybe you want to write a few paragraphs that build on the argument and that substantiates your argument with some evidence. So you want to make maybe a broad argument and then give some details, maybe from some examples from public life, public discussion, etc. And in the conclusion, you want to give your reader something to think about. So avoid saying, therefore, I think tariffs are not a good thing. Rather, you want to say, oh, given that today the US has increased tariffs on many sort of countries who have struggling economies, it will have certain consequences, and then maybe list out those consequences. So you want to have a sort of future-oriented conclusion that is based on what you have laid out for the reader before. You want to raise the stakes, give your reader something to think about, right? So conclusion is not just a summary, it really is something forward-looking. What are the stakes involved once you've taken your position? Where will that lead us? Now, in order to do these things, to be able to structure and write a compelling essay, you want to make an outline before you start writing. Make a quick outline, maybe take a minute, right? So that you know what your introduction does, what the 2 or 3 points in your essay are going to do, what will follow, which point will follow which one, and how you want to end your essay. This will ensure that you have flow, that you are not disconnected, and that you are clear in what you are writing. Yes, so you can always make an outline maybe in a margin or right at the end in pencil. From what we have discussed, Anviksha and I, in the last 45 minutes or so, we know that Part A has 75 questions, or is 75 marks. Part B is also about 75 marks. You want to be able to manage your time properly, right? That's why we've released these sample questions. Try solving the paper on your own before the exam. Maybe you want to solve the paper with a friend. Maybe you want to discuss your subjective answers as well. See what someone else is thinking. Try to learn to think from different perspectives before you arrive at a conclusion. So solving it together actually can be quite a lot of fun. It can be a learning experience. I'm going to end by saying that we are not going to be prescriptive and say that we're looking for one type of answer in Part B. We're also not prescriptive about the syllabus. In Part A, we can take some questions and discuss this again. Remember that Part B is an opportunity for you to combine your self-expression, right, with clear communication and analytical thinking. There is some information available on evaluation and eligibility that can be found in the notification on our website. So if you go to the BA Honors webpage and you go to admission, right at the end, you'll find a PDF of an official admission notification telling you how do we evaluate Part A and Part B for you to sort of qualify. I'm going to stop there and we can take questions. Okay, so let's begin. I'll begin right at the end with the questions that came in about 45 minutes ago. And Anviksha, I'll direct some questions to you as well.
Sure.
So someone asks, is the same exam for law also? Is this only for OCI students? So the sample question papers that we've released are for the NLSAT-BA, which is an undergraduate program. The BA LLB program at the law school, to be eligible, you have to give the CLAT exam, which is a very different exam and has a different a sort of design, and that exam usually is in December. So this is for the NLSAT-BA. We have other programs at the National Law School, but not at the undergraduate level. There's the LLB program as well. There's an NLSAT happening on the same day for that. But this is for everyone giving the NLSAT-BA. Where can we get previous year question papers? The one that we just discussed is from last year, and you will be able to find it if you pay for the application, and you will be able to get all 75 questions as well as the subjective questions in Part B. Will there be too much difference between the sample paper and the actual exam paper? Well, this is an indicative paper, right? It will not be exact, but it does give you a sense for what we are testing you for. We're testing you for reading and comprehension. Can you read a passage in front of you and answer questions based on that? And then just be able to reason your way through some of the more tricky questions. Do you have some basic quantitative skills? And can you be able to infer answers from, data based on the questions we set? That's what we're testing you for. So this gives you, the two sample sets that we've given you should give you a good indication of what we're testing for. Anviksha, someone asks, it would be very good of you to share the difficulty of Part A and pattern of Part B in the actual paper. Based on your reading of the quantitative questions, do you want to say anything about the difficulty in quant?
As far as the quant part is concerned, it's I cannot comment on the difficulty because difficulty I think is a subjective concept here. But yeah, I can assure that the exam, will not test your advanced mathematical skills like maybe calculus. But yeah, you are assumed expected to be thorough with the non-advanced or standard high school mathematics. So the objective is not to have advanced mathematics, but application of the basic concepts and to be able to interpret the numbers, understand them. I think that is all. And yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Let me go to some more questions. How can we develop critical reasoning? Is it even achievable in the next 2 months along with the boards? So what we are looking for is a student who is interested in public questions and how do we think about them, right? Public issues. So if you open like a long form essay in a good magazine or a newspaper and you read op-eds, you will be able to see that people are debating, and not just for and against, but really being able to develop different ways of seeing a particular issue, right? This is something that if you are someone who's interested in these questions, this is something that you are likely to be attuned for. Even in terms of Part A, when we are asking you to develop critical reasoning with respect to the passages, most of them, the answers are part of the passage. You just need to think a little carefully and you will be able to come to a conclusion. So we are not asking you to do something more than being someone who's generally aware, sort of a careful thinker is someone who's able to think about different perspectives carefully. That's what we're asking you to do. And even with quant, like Anviksha said, something that if you've done 10th standard mathematics, you should be familiar with these questions. How do we go about GK for this exam? So it's not just general knowledge, right? It's not just facts, whether in the past or in the present. It's being aware of certain questions that people today are concerned about, are familiar with, and how do you approach them? So it's really about perspective as well. It's not just about facts. We are not testing you on simple facts. We're thinking about how might our students, those who are interested to come to NLS, be able to think about dilemmas that are pressing issues in the world today. So I've answered questions on syllabus. If for some time you have been reading pieces in the media, reading the newspapers, reading op-eds, reading magazines, you should be able to find a lot of these things quite familiar. Are there any fixed number of questions specified to be asked per section in part A so that we get a rough idea about which sections to practice more? So students who come to the National Law School do a number of subjects, especially in their first few years, right? First year and maybe in the second as well. So they're doing numbers, economy, power, politics, society. And this is the kind of orientation. So when you look at the question paper, you really get a sense of what are the discussions students are having between themselves at NLS, right? So rather than thinking about, oh, can I practice one section, you really want to have a well-rounded ability to answer all of these questions, because our students are interested in all of these questions, in numbers, in reading and writing narrative, that's reading and comprehension, in economy, in politics, in sociology or society.
Yeah, so if I may add, as far as the preparation is concerned for the exam, we do understand that you might be having several doubts about the exact nature of the questions, division of the questions, but we would like to clarify that there is no fixed blueprint across sections A and B. So as it is mentioned on the website, you are aware of the topics that you need to prepare, but in section A, you will have 75 questions, but we cannot clarify that how many passages of each type you will be getting across the four categories. So the distribution can vary in each paper, in sample paper, or from year to year. But as far as your preparation is concerned, it should be a balanced preparation across all the fundamental topics. And again, it should be able to encompass all the uh, interdisciplinary concepts of numbers, economy, and interpretation. So there is no clear-cut segregation here that you are expected to, answer 15 questions on the basis of quant and 5 on critical. No, it's not like that. You can have an overlap also, or there could be a skewed distribution more from one particular section and vice versa. So the best strategy is to have a balanced preparation and focus equally on all the sections while preparing.
Right. In part B, are there any answers that would be considered outright wrong, as we've only been told to share our opinions on the pointers given? So I just want to say again, we're not asking you for simply your opinions or your feelings. We are asking you to be able to demonstrate that you can think from various perspectives and then arrive at a reasoned conclusion backed by evidence, right? So you need to do a little more work than just give us your opinion or your feelings. Because when you do, let's say, a BA, you want to create an informed argument, you want to develop an informed argument. So you need to think about what someone else might say that would undermine your argument. So you need to think a few steps ahead, and you need to demonstrate to your evaluator that you have a sense of what people are discussing, right? And then come to a reasonable argument that you think is compelling on the particular question.
Ammel, just 1 second. I think there was a previous question in which there was a sub part. If you can answer this, they're asking the general awareness, will it be static or current? If static, GK will be asked, how much and from where, or what topics we should, can, or cover. Please guide.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So in terms of general awareness, we're not asking you simply for facts, right? We're giving you passages in part A, and then you are supposed to sort of be aware of, important, publicly well-known sort of issues, and then answer on the basis of that. And again, in part B, when you are able to bring in questions, or sorry, examples in to support your argument, here again, we expect that you have a general sense of awareness. So this idea of static or current does not quite apply, because we simply expect you to be well-read, well-informed, someone who's following the news and is able to read carefully, read op-eds, read editorials, read long-form essays, Even read fiction, because in our sample paper, we do have a passage from fiction. So just get into the habit of reading, let's say, 500-word passages outside of your textbooks, right? And I think that should hold you in good stead.
Yeah, so I think the duration of the webinar is over, so we cannot see more questions now, but
I'll
maybe if
answer.
you,
I'll answer just a few. I'm looking at
yeah,
the
sure, sure.
Q&A. So what is the official word limit for short answers and essay? We don't have an official word limit because we know that students' handwriting differs, but we have given you space and we are asking you not to exceed that space. So it's really a constraint of space that you have to be very careful about. Kindly share a structure or template for Part B answers. Again, we have said that we are not being prescriptive, but we have discussed what are the ways in which you want to write a compelling answer, but we are not being prescriptive about templates. How to practice answer writing, where to get questions that would be similar to this pattern. We have released 2 sets, and I think it would take you some time to practice. We say do practice on them, do begin reading pieces in the media and essays. Go to bookstores. You might find many things that will help you, many works that will help you broaden your understanding of the world. What is the time duration of the examination? We have all of this information on the admissions page of the BA Honors Program on the website. Please take a look. It's 150 minutes. It's a time duration taken in total. No, it's not split into 2 different durations. You can choose based on your own sort of strengths and your reading of the patterns of the sample question papers, how you'd like to divide your time. We recommend that you take, just a little time to skim the paper so you have a sense for what to expect before you begin to write. Which one of these is better in a 400-word essay? Again, we are not talking about word limits, but we are saying stick to the space, exploring 360 degrees of that topic, breadth-wise, diving deep into only 2 or 3 points. So again, it's not possible in the span of a few minutes to be able to explore 300 something comprehensively. You want to produce some tension to give your reader something to think about. So maybe you want to think about 2 or 3 perspectives that are sort of divergent on the similar issue or a problem, and then tell your reader what what kind of position you would take. How can we improve our English, and where do we do more practice about paragraph and passage-based questions? Well, you can do quite a lot of reading, read the newspaper, read articles in the media. And then practice these answers. You may want to, practice over and over. Think about what are the issues today, try and write responses to them. Look at maybe climate change, for instance, or that thing about, cows, goats, dogs. Think about what's headlines today. What are the dilemmas that people face, or what are dilemmas that people have been discussing over the last few years, and then try and write a response. That will just get you into the practice of writing. Then you can revise, you can think about, oh, what is my introduction saying? Is it going to catch the interest of my reader? How might I be more clear in my writing? These are things that will give you a better sense of your own writing and how to approach this exam. I don't see any more questions here.
Yeah, I just want to add in this case regarding English language. So we do understand that we have a diversity of students who are appearing for the entrance exam. But the concern here is, not to come up with very fancy words or nice English. As long as you are able to convey your point of view and you are able to write it clearly in simple manner, structure it properly, and you are able to convey your point of view and come up with a valid conclusion, that is fine. So don't focus too much on the level of English here. And just one more point from my side, and then maybe we can close because I could see a couple of questions which are not visible now. It will just take a minute, I think. So somebody had, I think, mentioned about this question number 23, that why not A is right, or I mean, what is the reasoning to rule out option A and B? So one thing that you have to note is whether it is quant or critical reasoning, you have to choose the best possible answers. Definitely, there could be overlap between one or more options. So in this case, only a rise in GDP could have been the correct answer. It can be in several instances, but for the current case, in the paragraph, it is mentioned that the population is increasing and there is a robust population growth. So only a rise in GDP is an incomplete information that is given to you. You cannot comment on the entire change in the GDP per capita on the basis of only one variable. So the more apt choice in this case is C. So yeah, so with regard to MCQ, you have to choose the best possible answer. And with regard to your passage and essay questions, please don't forget that you are supposed to write the answer in the space that is provided. Don't start writing and then, ask for more sheets and so on. Please remember this thing, that you have to write your answer in the space that is given to you. I think that's all from my side.
Okay, so thank you very much for your interest in the NLSAT BA. We look forward to seeing you giving the exam. Be the friend who brings a friend to the exam. I think the questions will give you lots to discuss as well. Good luck. Enjoy answering the exam. Good luck with the board exams as well. And keep in touch. Follow us on social media. Visit our website. You'll get to know about our activities and what students are doing at the National Law School. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Bye.
all
Good
the
night.
best, everyone. Bye.